The sign flickered red and white in the dark. Stanley's Diner. Open 24 hours. I hadn't seen another soul for miles, and my stomach was starting to turn on itself, so I pulled in. The parking lot was almost empty, just my rig and an old rusted sedan that looked like it hadn't moved in a decade. Still, the diner lights were on. Looked clean, ordinary. But the second I stepped through the door, I knew something was off. It wasn't the smell. Wasn't the lighting. It was the way everyone stopped talking. The way every set of eyes, 4, 5 people, turned to face me at once. Not surprised. Not curious. Expectant. They looked at me like I was late. A woman behind the counter smiled. "Coffee's fresh, Dave." My foot froze mid-step. I hadn't told her my name. I hadn't said a word. Before I could respond, she pointed toward a corner booth. "Your usual's waiting." My mouth went dry. I hadn't been here before. Had I? I turned toward the window, heart pounding. My truck looked normal, parked where I left it. Everything had been normal. Just a few hours ago, I was running. I-40 westbound, no delays, no stops, just me. And the road. I'd been driving since sundown, eyes burning, fingers tight on the wheel. One of those nights where the road melts into itself and every mile feels like a loop. My last stop was hours ago, and I'd burned through my last energy. Drink sometime before midnight. I hadn't seen another gas station in at least 60 miles. Not a truck. Not a town sign. Nothing but desert and blacktop. Then, just when I started thinking I might have missed a turn, this neon glow bloomed over the next hill. Stanley's Diner. It sat there like something out of a postcard. Chrome, trim, checkerboard floors, glowing red booths, all spotless. Too spotless. No dust on the windows, not a smudge on the glass. I parked the rig, stepped down, stretched my legs, and headed in. A bell above the door jingled as I pushed it open. Inside, 5 people sat scattered in the booths, 1 per table. All of them stopped eating and turned to look at me. No smiles, no nods, just stares. I gave a half wave and walked to the counter. The waitress was already pouring coffee. "Cream, 2 sugars." "Right, Dave?" I froze. How did you... She pushed the mug toward me. "We've got the meatloaf plate coming, just the way you like it." I hadn't said a word. She leaned in a little. "How's your shoulder? That old injury still bothering you?" My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I'd never seen her before in my life, never been here. Never told anyone about the rotator cuff from back in '03. Something about her smile made me sit down anyway, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this place wasn't just waiting for a customer. It was waiting for me. The meatloaf was perfect. Don't just mean good. I mean like someone went back in time, found my mom's old recipe card from 1998, and cooked it exactly the way she used to when I was a kid. Same mashed potatoes, same gravy. Even the cracked white plate looked familiar. I was halfway through when I noticed the guy in the corner booth. He hadn't touched his food. Just sat there with a cup of coffee, hands wrapped around the mug like he was waiting for it to speak. Every now and then he looked over at me. Not long enough to be aggressive, but just enough to register. A slow recognition. Finally, he stood up and walked over. Tall guy, gray jacket. His face looked like someone you sort of remember from a crowd, familiar but just out of reach. "You mind if I join you, Dave?" I blinked. "Do I know you?" He slid into the booth anyway. "I remember when you rolled your truck on I-25 near Las Vegas," he said. "The snowstorm, December '07. You blacked out for 20 seconds and woke up facing downhill. Front axle, snapped. I dropped my fork. Nobody knew about that. I didn't even tell the company." He nodded slowly. "And you still hear her sometimes, don't you? That girl who didn't walk away from the car you hit?" My chest locked up. I hadn't said her name in over a decade, not even in therapy. I stared at him. "Who the hell are you?" He smiled, not cruel, not smug, just certain. "You've been driving toward us for a long time, Dave. Roads don't just end. They point somewhere. Something about the way he said us chilled me. I stood up, suddenly dizzy. The air smelled like burning brake pads. When I looked back at the corner booth he'd come from, it was empty. No plate, no mug. Like, he'd never been there at all. I practically ran out of the diner, heart jackhammering in my chest. The cool desert air hit my face like a slap, but it didn't clear the fog in my head. I climbed into the cab, slammed the door, and pulled up my GPS. No signal. Nothing. Not even a pin for where I was. I tapped through 3 different apps: Google, Maps, Rand McNally, some local route tool, all of them blank, like I wasn't anywhere. I typed in Stanley's Diner. No results, no addresses nearby. Not even a road name. The desert around me was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. I started the engine and got moving. Just keep driving, I told myself. Get back to the interstate. Shake this off. Forget the whole damn night. 10 minutes later, the neon sign flickered into view again. Stanley's Diner. Exactly the same. Same rusted sedan out front. Same light buzzing above the door. Except this time, it was dark inside. Closed. I parked and stepped out, against every voice in my head screaming, not to. The door was unlocked, no customers, no waitress. No plates, no smell of coffee or food, just silence. Behind the counter was a corkboard with a few yellowed photos pinned to it. One of them stopped me cold. A black and white snapshot, maybe 20 years old. Staff lined up in front of the diner. Smiling, cook, waitress, some random guy and me, standing dead center, grinning like I belonged. But I'd never been here before tonight, at least. I didn't think I had. The ledger sat on the counter like it had always been there. Thick, leather-bound, and ancient. The kind of thing that belonged in a courthouse or church, not some dusty roadside diner that didn't exist on a single map. Curiosity overrode fear. I opened it. Every page was lined with names stretching back decades. First and last, clean cursive, all in black ink. No printed headers, no explanation. Just names, dates, and destinations. Some I recognized from trucker chatter. Others, not a clue. Then I found mine. There it was. David L. Mercer, ink still wet like I'd signed it seconds ago. Underneath it, birth date, 4/11/1982. Company, independent, long-haul freight, route, I-70, 191 South. Final stop, accepted. Accepted? I hadn't signed anything, hadn't agreed to anything. All I did was eat a plate of food and try to leave. The sound of a footstep behind me froze my breath. I turned. The waitress was standing there again. Same apron, same hair tied back, same look in her eyes, too calm, too certain. You sat down, she said. That means you agreed. What the hell is this place? She didn't answer, just looked past me toward the front window. I turned, and my truck was gone. Gone. In its place sat a different rig. Same model, same make. But the license plate was missing. The number on the side had been scrubbed off. It looked like a shadow of my truck, like someone had copied it from memory and left out the details. Panic bubbled up, thick and fast. I ran, outside hoping maybe I'd parked somewhere else that I'd missed it in my rush. But no. Just that rig. Sitting there. Waiting. Like it belonged to me now. Like I belonged to it. I backed away slowly, eyes darting between the truck, the dark diner, and the empty road. There was no road crew, no traffic, no one to flag down. Just endless horizon and that damn neon sign flickering faintly overhead. Stanley's. Diner open all night. The bell above the door jingled, same as always. I looked up from behind the counter, coffee pot in hand, and there he was. A new face. Bleary-eyed, road-worn. Shoulders hunched from too many hours behind the wheel. He moved like he didn't quite trust the floor beneath him. Like he knew something. Was wrong but couldn't say what. I gave him a warm smile. "Evening, Rick," I said, already pouring the coffee. He blinked, caught off guard. How'd you? You look like you could use something hot. Sit wherever. He did. Same booth I sat in once. I topped off his mug and set the pot back on the warmer, watching him glance around the diner like he was trying to make sense of it all. He would. Eventually. I caught my reflection in the chrome napkin holder. White apron. Name tag I didn't remember putting on. Same walls. Same flickering light. It all felt familiar now. I remember what it felt like to be him. That jolt of fear. The confusion. The road that never led anywhere. But that was miles ago. Another life. Now, I wait, pour coffee, smile. The night's long out here, and the next stop always finds you. I was asleep in my rig for exactly 2 hours, but when I woke up, the odometer showed 67 more miles. That number hit me like a punch. I sat up fast, heart pounding, trying to blink the fog from my brain. The truck was parked exactly where I'd left it, nose in at a truck stop just outside Tonopah. Trailer sealed, key still in the cup holder, and yet the dash didn't lie. 67 miles. I climbed out and circled the rig, running a hand along the side like I was expecting it to flinch. Nothing looked tampered with, nothing broken or cut. But the tires were warm, too warm, like they'd been moving recently. Even the smell of burnt rubber lingered in the air. I checked the GPS history. Blank. No route logged after 1:02 a.m., just a flat line until now. Fuel was down a notch too, barely, but enough to notice. Every part of me knew I hadn't driven anywhere. I was bone-deep exhausted when I passed out, and I would have heard the engine unless it wasn't me behind the wheel. Unless I wasn't alone in this cab last night, and I had no idea where those 67 miles had taken me. It was supposed to be an easy stretch. Nevada runs usually are. Long, flat, desolate. I'd picked up a sealed trailer outside Reno, routine drop and hook, headed down toward Vegas. Nothing unusual on the manifest, just dry goods, probably paper or plastic. No hazmat, no escorts, no questions. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, I was running on caffeine fumes and barely legal drive time. I planned to hit the rest area past mile marker 208. Nothing fancy, just a gravel pull-off with a couple of rusted picnic tables and a busted vending machine. I'd parked there before. No lights, no noise, and no one to bother you. I pulled in just after midnight, logged out, killed the engine, locked everything down like I always do. Doors, trailer latch, even slid a wedge behind my seat to keep it pressed. Habit. Crawled into the sleeper, boots still on. Within minutes I was out cold. Somewhere in that murky half-sleep I thought I heard movement. Tires crunching gravel, a door creaking open. I twitched, maybe grunted, but didn't wake up fully. Just told myself it was a dream, like when your brain echoes real sounds in fake places. When I finally sat up, the cab felt different. I couldn't say why. The engine was dead quiet, colder than it should have been. But the tires, when I stepped outside to stretch, they radiated warmth. Fresh warmth. Like they'd been running. The gravel looked disturbed, faint, drag marks leading nowhere. I climbed back up, heart thudding, and glanced at the dash. 67 extra miles. I hadn't gone anywhere. But something had. First thing I did was check the dash cam. Footage rolled fine until 1:12 a.m., then nothing. Just a dead gap until 2:47 when it picked back up with me still parked, still sleeping in the bunk. It didn't glitch, didn't restart. It just skipped. Like something had turned it off and turned it back on. But I never moved. Same story, on the GPS tracker. No breadcrumbs, no pings, no route data for over 90 minutes. Just a void where 67 miles should be. I checked my fuel gauge again. I'd topped off in Fallon, and when I parked, the needle was steady. Now it was down a noticeable tick. Not huge, but enough to raise alarm bells. Diesel doesn't burn itself. I sat there, engine idling, staring into the rear view like I was expecting the trailer to blink. Then I had an idea. Dumb maybe, but I needed answers. I threw the rig into gear and retraced my way back up the highway, scanning both shoulders, looking for anything. Skid marks, paint flecks, deer. About 15 miles out, I caught sight of faint tire tracks, veering off the shoulder, wide enough for my rig, deep. Recent. I parked, hopped out, and followed them. They cut straight into the desert, slicing through scrub and gravel. No roads, no landmarks, no signs of why. But then, half a mile in, they turned around. Another set of identical tracks met mine, coming from the opposite direction. Same treads, same depth, like a mirrored copy. Like something had brought my truck back. I stood there, heart pounding in my ears, staring at those ghost return tracks fading into the dust. They didn't come from any road. They came from nowhere. I called dispatch around noon, still rattled, trying to explain what happened. Without sounding like I'd lost my mind. 67 phantom miles missing footage. Tire tracks that led into nowhere. Their response? Probably just driver error. They told me to get some rest, double-check my logs, and keep moving. I could hear the shrug through the phone. I didn't argue. Just drove to the next truck stop, parked, and tried to shake the crawling sensation in my skin. As dusk fell, I walked the perimeter of the rig again. Everything looked normal. Still sealed. Still locked. Still wrong. Something pushed me to check the sleeper one more time. That's when I saw them. Faint but undeniable. Handprints, muddy, streaked across the inside of the sleeper curtain, like someone had gripped it from within. But the floor? Clean. No mud, no prints, no signs of entry. Just those damn smudges where no one else should have been. Then the CB crackled. Not a station. Not a trucker. Just static. Then a voice, soft and strained, barely audible. It said my name. I froze. Didn't answer. Couldn't. Later that night, I drifted off in the bunk, exhausted but uneasy. Dreamt I was driving, but not from the driver's seat. I was watching from the mirror, unable to move, while my own hands gripped the wheel and steered down an endless, unlit road. A road that didn't exist. When I jerked awake, heart in my throat, the dash clock glared back at me. 3:17 a.m., I checked. The odometer. Another 44 miles, gone into the dark. I did everything I could to stay awake that night. Coffee, music, windows down, eyes fixed on the mirrors. The moment 2:30 rolled around, I was gripping the wheel like a lifeline, willing myself to hold on. I wasn't going to let it happen again, whatever it was. But I must have blinked, or slipped, because the next thing I knew, I jolted awake, to daylight pouring through the windshield and my rig idling in a completely different parking lot. I didn't remember getting there, didn't remember stopping, didn't remember a damn thing. My pulse spiked. The engine was still warm. The wheels had dirt packed in the treads, red dust not from where I'd parked before. I opened the GPS, half expecting it to be blank again. But this time, there was a full route, twisting, looping, returning back to the same dot it began with. Not a highway, not even a road I recognized. Just a ghost line drawn across open land. I followed it during the day, this time on purpose. Eventually, it led me down a crumbling side road, unmarked, eaten by weeds, until I found it. A truck. Same model, same color, rusted through and half swallowed by the trees. I climbed up to the cab, heart racing. Inside, on the passenger seat, was a weathered logbook, my name written across the cover in familiar handwriting. I flipped through it. Routes I'd never driven. Cities I'd never visited. Entry after entry. Like someone had been recording a second life I never lived. And then, the last page, written in shaky, slanted script. He drives when I sleep. My knees gave out. I sat there staring at those words, cold, settling in deep. Because I knew. They weren't talking about some metaphor. They were warning me. I turned in the rig that weekend, told dispatch I needed time off. No explanation, just burnout. They didn't ask questions. I think I looked wrecked enough to justify it. For a while I stayed off the road, Tried to get some rest, but rest didn't help. Something stayed with me. Weeks passed, I didn't talk about it. Didn't tell anyone about the logbook or the missing hours or the mirror dreams. I figured maybe it had faded like a bad trip, a nightmare caught in diesel fumes. Then one morning I walked out to my personal truck and noticed the odometer. 19 miles. I hadn't driven it, not even started the engine, but the tires were scuffed with fresh gravel, the fuel gauge slightly lower. Just like before. That night I double-checked everything, locked every door, hid the keys, kept the curtains closed and lights on. But in the morning, more miles, sometimes 5, sometimes 40. No one ever sees it move. But the GPS? It keeps drawing new roads, curves and paths that don't exist on any map. Like something's still out there, still driving. I sleep with the keys on the nightstand, the door's locked, but every morning, there's more miles. I've been a trucker for over 15 years, and I thought I'd seen just about everything the road could throw at me. Wild animals darting across the highway, drunks swerving into my lane, storms that made me think the sky itself was collapsing. But nothing, and I mean nothing, ever made my blood run cold like what I saw that night. A face, pressed against the inside of my windshield. Not outside, not peering in from the road, but inside my cab, staring straight at me while I drove, 70 miles an hour through the dark. I can still see it when I close my eyes. The skin was pale, almost gray, like it hadn't felt sunlight in years. The features were distorted, lips stretched too thin, eyes wide open as if it had been holding its breath. The glass fogged up where its nose pressed against it, leaving smears like condensation on a bathroom mirror. My hands locked on the wheel, knuckles white, heart slamming against my ribs. In that instant, one thought screamed through my head louder than the engine beneath me. I'm not alone in this truck. To explain how I ended up staring at that face, I need to take you back to the start of my run that night. I had picked up a load just outside Amarillo, heading east on a route I'd driven 100 times before. It was supposed to be an easy haul, quiet roads, steady pace, the kind of trip where you let the hum of the tires carry you into a rhythm, but something felt off from the moment I pulled out of the lot. The night was too still, not peaceful, not calm, just heavy, like the air itself didn't want me on the road. The farther I drove, the stranger it got. The radio wouldn't hold. A signal. All I got was static that rose and fell like breathing. I passed an old gas station I didn't remember, its windows boarded, one light flickering above the pumps even though the place looked long dead. I should have shrugged it off. Truckers see weird things at night. But when I glanced at the rearview mirror, I swear I thought I saw movement in the sleeper behind me. A shadow shifting where there shouldn't have been one. I told myself it was nothing. Just fatigue playing tricks. I'd been on the road long enough to know exhaustion can mess with your head. Still, every time I checked the mirrors, I felt like something was just out of sight, waiting. Then came the draft. Cold air brushing the back of my neck, even though the windows were rolled up tight and the heater was running low. My fingers twitched on the wheel and I caught myself glancing at the passenger seat as if someone might be sitting there. Empty. Always empty. Yet my chest stayed tight, my breath coming shorter. Miles slipped by like that. Me trying to shake the feeling, convincing myself I was imagining it. But deep down, I already knew something wasn't right. I wasn't just tired. I wasn't just paranoid. Something was with me in that cab, and no amount of logic was going to make it disappear. And the worst part, I hadn't even seen its face, yet. The noises started small, so faint I thought they were coming from the road itself. A soft tapping like a loose chain clinking against metal, but it was too steady, too deliberate. I turned down the radio, hoping it was interference. The static died, but the sound didn't. It was coming from inside the cab, somewhere near the dashboard. I leaned forward, squinting at the gauges, listening. That's when I caught something else. Breathing. Slow. Shallow. Almost in rhythm. With my own, but definitely not mine. I froze, every muscle locking as I strained to hear. The engine roared beneath me. The tires droned against the asphalt, but beneath it all was the soft hiss of someone exhaling in the dark. I told myself again it was fatigue. Long drives can trick your senses. Maybe I was hearing the wind, maybe the heater, maybe nothing at all. But the longer I tried to rationalize it, the louder it grew. A shift of weight followed, the subtle creak of fabric, like someone moving in the sleeper behind me. My palms slicked with sweat as I gripped the wheel tighter. I couldn't ignore it anymore. At the next rest stop, a cracked asphalt lot lit by a single buzzing lamp, I pulled over. The silence hit hard when I killed the engine. My boots crunched gravel as I circled the rig, checking the doors, the trailer, every lock. Nothing. Just the sound of insects in the weeds and the faint hum of that dying lamp. I opened the cab door slowly, flashlight beam cutting across the empty passenger seat. I swung it toward the sleeper, heart hammering. Blankets, a duffel bag, my thermos. Nothing out of place. But the air was still wrong. Thick, stale, like someone had been breathing it all in before I opened the door. I climbed back in, telling myself I was losing it, that I just needed caffeine and music to keep me sharp. Still, as I rolled out of that lot and back onto the highway, the silence pressed in heavier than before. The tapping had stopped, but the feeling hadn't. That weight in the cab with me, it was patient, watching, and deep down, I realized it was only a matter of time before it showed itself. I don't know how many miles passed before it happened. Maybe 30, maybe less. The highway was empty, just two pale beams stretching ahead into the dark. I was starting to convince myself I'd imagined everything when it appeared. Sudden, impossible, undeniable. A face, pressed against the inside of my windshield. My whole body locked up. Its skin was stretched thin, almost waxy, the features warped by the glass. The eyes were too wide, pupils blown out until they looked like black pools swallowing the whites. Its mouth hung open in a soundless scream, lips trembling as if it were gasping for air. For a split second I thought I'd actually hit someone. That. Maybe a person had been thrown onto the hood, but the face wasn't outside. It was inside, inches from my own, where no one should have been. I jerked the wheel, tires screaming against the pavement as the rig swerved hard. My coffee flew from the cup holder splattering across the console. Horn blaring, brakes grinding, I fought the truck back under control. By the time I dared glance at the windshield again, the face was gone. Just me, panting in the driver's seat, staring at my own reflection in the glass. But then I saw it. Smears on the glass where its skin had pressed against it. Oily streaks, fogged patches like condensation. My pulse spiked as I rubbed at them with my sleeve, but they didn't fade. They were real, physical proof of something I couldn't explain. For a long time I sat there trembling, the truck idling, hazards blinking against the empty road. I told myself I was hallucinating, that exhaustion was twisting reality, but the evidence was right there on the glass. My reflection looked back at me, wide-eyed, pale. But I couldn't shake the thought that something else was staring too, something just out of sight. I pressed the pedal, forcing the truck forward again, praying the yaw motion would ground me, that the rhythm of the wheels would drown out the panic clawing up my throat. But no matter how far the miles stretched behind me, the image stayed burned in my mind, that face trapped inside with me, waiting for another chance to surface. The road stretched on like a black ribbon, endless and unforgiving. Every shadow in the mirrors seemed to shift. Every flicker of light on the dashboard felt like movement. I kept telling myself to focus, to just keep the truck steady, but my nerves were fraying with every mile. The smears on the windshield hadn't faded. They caught the glow of my headlights, faint and oily, like fingerprints left by something that shouldn't exist. Then the CB crackled. At first it was just static, but underneath it came a whisper. Not words exactly, just a rasp like someone breathing straight into the mic. My stomach dropped. I hadn't touched the radio since earlier, and no one had hailed me on this stretch of highway in hours. I turned the knob, but the static rose, swallowing the cab in a wall of hissing noise. Just before I killed the power, I heard it again, a voice, low and distorted. "You're not alone." I gripped the wheel tighter, scanning the sleeper in the rear view, and that's when I saw it. A figure shifting in the shadows. Just for a second, hunched low, pale face flashing in the corner of my eye. I snapped my head around, flashlight in hand, but the bunk was empty. Blankets tossed, duffel bag still, nothing out of place. But I knew what I'd seen. The air grew heavy, pressing down on my chest. My breaths came shallow and sweat rolled cold down my spine. I remembered stories I'd heard at truck stops over the years. Whispers about hitchhikers who never made it out, about something that rode with truckers on long, lonely highways. I'd laughed them off back then, chalked them up to road legends told to kill time. Now those stories felt less like jokes and more like warnings I hadn't taken seriously, and then it happened again. The face slammed against the windshield, harder this time, nose and lips flattening grotesquely against the glass. I screamed, jerking the wheel, horn blasting into the night. When it vanished, I barely got the truck steady, heart battering my ribs like it wanted out. By then I knew the truth. This wasn't exhaustion and it wasn't imagination. Something had found me out here, and it wasn't planning to leave quietly. By the time I spotted the glow of a truck stop ahead, I was running on fumes. Not just the tank, but my own sanity. The neon sign buzzed like salvation, promising people light, safety. I pulled in fast, air brakes hissing, and killed the engine. For the first time in hours, the world went quiet. I sat there, gripping the wheel, trying to convince myself it was over. Just exhaustion. Just stress. But I couldn't ignore the glass. The smears were still there, unmistakable. I forced myself out of the cab, boots hitting the pavement, lungs sucking in the cold night air like I'd been drowning. The lights of the diner, the sound of engines idling nearby, it should have been comforting. But then I made the mistake of looking back. Through the windshield, in the driver's seat where I had been moments ago, a face stared out at me. Pale, stretched thin, lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. My stomach dropped as its eyes locked with mine, unblinking, claiming the cab as its own. I left the truck right there that night. Walked away without looking back again, but sometimes when I pass a rig on the highway, I swear I see a face in the glass waiting for its next ride. You ever hear a scream come through a dead radio? Most truckers have heard static, sure. Silence, maybe. But a scream, that guttural, blood-freezing kind, that's something else. I wouldn't believe it either if I hadn't lived it. This happened about 9 months ago, on a long haul from Phoenix to Albuquerque. Route 191. Desert stretch. Nothing but sand, rocks, and old legends. The kind of road truckers call ghost quiet, where even your engine hum feels too loud. The stretch has, this spot, miles of dead air. No CB, no FM, no GPS. Everyone says it's just a technical void. Weird bounce in the ionosphere, one guy told me at a diner. But I don't think science can explain what I heard, or what I saw. Something piggybacks on those frequencies. Something old. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't tired. I had 2 full thermoses of truck stop coffee and a truck running smooth as glass. But when I crossed mile marker 239, my dashboard flickered, my radio hissed, and beneath the static I heard it. A voice screaming like it was buried alive, distant at first, then way too close. That's where this all began. The scream wasn't a glitch. It pierced through the static like a rusted knife, scraping the inside of my skull. I twisted the radio dial, flipping through frequencies, FM, AM, even CB. All of it. Just white noise and that damn scream, fading in and out like it was crawling between stations. Then came the voices, garbled, layered. Too many to count. Male, female, maybe not even human. Some whispering, some shouting. It was like tuning into a station broadcasting straight from hell. I tapped the dash. Everything else seemed fine. RPM steady, oil pressure good, temperature normal, but the hairs on my arm stood up like I was standing too close to a live wire. Then my GPS chimed. Route recalculating. That made no sense. I'd punched in this run 100 times before. There's only one road out here. Nothing to recalculate. But sure enough, the map shifted, and a new turn appeared. It was labeled only as Service Route 0. Never heard of it. At first, I figured it was a glitch or maybe a new access road. But there was the sign, an old rusted green one barely hanging onto its bolts. Service Route 0, emergency use only. I should have kept going. Every bone in my body screamed no. But the GPS was insistent. A red arrow blinked over and over, telling me to turn right. I slowed the rig. The road was narrow, single lane, no shoulder, flanked by jagged rocks and twisted scrub. No tire tracks, no reflectors, just blacktop swallowed by shadows. I took it anyway. That's the thing no one tells you about trucking. Sometimes instinct takes a backseat to habit. You follow directions, you trust the machine, even when it's wrong. Especially when it's wrong. The further I drove, the quieter everything got. Not just the radio. My own engine began to feel muffled, like I was hearing it underwater. The air changed too. Thicker. Still. I rolled down the window, expecting the familiar desert breeze. But there was nothing. Not even the wind wanted to follow me down this road. That's when I noticed the time. It was still 2:13 a.m., same as when I made the turn. The clock was stuck, and that's when I realized, so was I. I should have turned back. But that's the thing. There was no place to turn. The road narrowed even more. The shoulder crumbled away into dusty ravines, and the horizon? Gone. No moon. No stars. Just black sky pressing down like a lid. My headlights barely cut 5 feet ahead. It felt like driving through a tunnel of tar. Then the radio exploded. Not literally, but it felt like it. A sudden burst of sound, like dozens of people screaming all at once, sharp and layered like a riot in reverse. Some were sobbing, others howling. A baby cried. A woman whispered my name. My name. I yanked the power knob. Nothing happened. The radio stayed on, the noise building, overlapping, twisting into something wrong. And underneath it all, I heard the static breathing. No rhythm, just wet, broken gasps like someone drowning in mud. I slammed the dash. The radio finally went silent, but the silence didn't help. I caught something in my side mirror, just a flicker, a pale blur pacing my truck. I looked out the window. Nothing. Checked the mirror again. It was still there, running just out of view. Low to the ground, like a shadow crawling on all fours. Too fast, too smooth. Definitely not an animal. I eased off the gas. The thing slowed with me. Then my dash cam glitched. The screen fuzzed into a red haze. For a second, it showed something in front of me. Something standing in the middle of the road. Tall, thin, like a scarecrow made of skin. I blinked, and it was gone. Just asphalt again. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it over the engine. I wanted to stop. But stopping felt worse. So I kept going, creeping down this invisible stretch of nothing, hoping I'd find a junction, a rest area, anything. That's when my eyes caught something in the distance. Faint red lights, flickering, like hazard blinkers. Finally, a sign of life. I pressed the pedal. Not hard, just enough to roll forward faster. The red lights grew clearer. A car, maybe. A broken down rig, something. But as I got closer, my stomach dropped. The blinking lights weren't on a vehicle. They were embedded in the road. And they were pulsing. Like they were alive. The lights pulsed in a rhythm, slow, then fast, like a heartbeat trying to sync with mine. I pulled the truck to a crawl, squinting through the windshield. Whatever was ahead wasn't man-made. It looked like cables, or roots, threaded through the asphalt, glowing from inside. I should have reversed right then, but the truck jolted. Everything. Died engine, lights, dash, radio. The whole rig went black like someone flipped the master switch. I was rolling dead in neutral down a road that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. I hit the brakes, hard. The truck groaned and lurched to a stop. I sat frozen, hand still on the wheel, the only sound my breath fogging the cab. Then something whispered. It came from behind my seat. Not loud, wet, dry, and broken all at once. "You shouldn't be here." I spun around. Empty. Checked the sleeper bunk. Nothing. I reached for my flashlight, cracked the door, and stepped out. The air hit me like a wall. Thick, humid, smelling. Like rust and mold. No crickets, no wind, just silence that pushed back. I circled the front of the truck. The engine bay was dark but intact. No smoke, no leaks. I stepped back toward the cab, and that's when I saw it. My reflection in the side mirror, was smiling. But I wasn't. I stared at it. It stared back, that sick grin stretching too wide, too sharp. Then, right behind my reflection, something moved. A shape. Long limbs. No face. It slithered just out of sight, leaving a smear across the glass like cold breath. I jumped back into the cab, slamming the door shut, locking everything. And then, without warning, the truck powered on. Every light blinked awake. The engine roared, back to life. And the radio, it was playing one phrase on loop, over and over again. "You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here." I floored it. Didn't care where I was going. I just needed out. But the road didn't end. The lights in the pavement zipped past like veins. The GPS flickered again, back to 2:13 a.m., still always 2:13 a.m. And I knew something then. This road didn't lead somewhere. It was somewhere, and I was already deep inside it. I drove for what felt like hours. But the clock on the dash never moved. 13 a.m. My fuel gauge didn't budge either. I could have been rolling on fumes or a full tank, it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except getting off that road. Every time I thought I saw an exit, it blurred out like fog wiping away a dream. Landmarks repeated. A bent speed limit sign. A split boulder shaped like a claw. The same dead tree with a tire hanging from it, swaying in still air. That's when I saw the car. It was parked on the shoulder, hazard lights strobing through the dark. Something about it looked familiar. I slowed down, pulling alongside. Same color as my pickup back home. Same dents on the fender. Same cracked taillight. Then I saw the plates. My license plate. I opened the door before I could think better. The air outside was colder now. Unnaturally cold. Frost clung to the grass. My boots crunched as I stepped closer. The car was empty. Or so I thought. Then I looked in the driver's seat. It was me. My face, my jacket. My bloodied hands gripping the wheel. My eyes glassy, wide, and very dead. My mouth was stretched in a frozen scream. Lips cracked open like he'd been yelling for hours. I stumbled back, slipped, fell hard. From inside the car, the radio came alive. My voice, screaming the same words that played in my rig. "You shouldn't be here." It wasn't just a warning. It was a memory. My memory. And then I understood. This route. It's a trap. A loop. A snare tucked between frequencies. You don't just drive into it. You get copied, chewed up, replaced. That thing pacing me earlier? That wasn't a shadow. It was me. Or what I was becoming. I crawled back to the rig, shaking, half sobbing. I didn't remember starting the engine again. I didn't remember putting it in gear. But somehow, I was moving back the way I came. The road behind me peeled away like burning paper, and just before the blackness swallowed the wrecked car, I saw the other me turn. And smile. I woke up parked at a truck stop outside Flagstaff, midday sun, people around, life moving like none of it ever happened. My rig was spotless, full tank, clock blinking 2:14 a.m., like it had just ticked forward for the first time. Checked my logs, 12 hours missing. My dash cam, fried. Static screen. All the files corrupted. I told a dispatcher I had engine trouble, but I didn't tell him the rest. Who would believe me? I barely believe it myself. Weeks passed. I tried to find Service Route 0 on any map. Nothing. GPS history? Gone. Like the road erased itself. Like it never wanted to be found again. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. Sometimes, when I'm hauling at night, just as I cross mile marker 239, my radio crackles, just for a second, and I hear it, that same scream, and every time, it's my voice. Not yelling. Begging. Begging someone not to take that turn. Begging someone to listen. So if you ever drive Route 191 in the dark, and your radio goes dead, pray it stays that way, because if it screams, it's already too late. I've been behind the wheel for 22 years and I've seen some weird shit on the road. Drunks walking barefoot on highways, people staring from the woods at 3 a.m., even a guy once standing in the middle of I-80 wearing a wedding dress. But nothing comes close to what happened last November. I wasn't going to tell anyone. Honestly, I don't even know if I'm supposed to be alive right now. But I've been waking up every night at 3:17, drenched in sweat, hearing that same static hum in my ears, the one I heard there. It was supposed to be a standard overnight load out of Tulsa. Some third-party gig my dispatch picked up last minute said it paid double. The only thing was, the drop-off address didn't exist. Literally. The paperwork just had coordinates. That should have been my first red flag. But I took it. I needed the money. We always need the damn money. I followed the route. I delivered the load. But I swear on my life, the place I delivered to doesn't exist anymore. Or maybe it never did. And if you think I'm making this up, ask yourself why I've stopped driving at night. The load was nothing special. Standard dry, freight-sealed trailer. But everything else about the job felt off. My dispatcher, Tony, didn't know who the client was. He just said the broker was pushy, paid up front, and wanted someone who doesn't ask questions. The manifest looked clean. Coordinates punched into the GPS dragged a red line across northeastern Oklahoma, hugging the edge of nowhere. Roads I'd never seen. No towns, no stops. Just a gray trail through a dead zone. As I pulled out of the truck stop, I remember thinking how quiet it was. Not peaceful quiet, dead quiet, like the kind of silence right before a thunderclap. My CB was on, but just static. No chatter. Not even music on the AM band. About 50 miles in, I passed a sign that said, "Welcome to Tarker Ridge." The paint was peeling, and someone had spray-painted "Dead End" across it in red. I checked my phone. No bars. Google Maps didn't even register a town called Tarker Ridge. Never heard of it. I figured maybe it was one of those ghost towns, the kind that got swallowed up when highways changed. A few minutes later, I saw a wrecked pickup truck on the shoulder. Old Ford, rusted out, looked abandoned for years, and except the tire tracks beside it were fresh. I slowed down, scanned the cab. Empty. But the dome light was still on. I kept going. The trees started closing in after that. Real dense. My high. Beams barely cut through the fog rolling in from the right. Everything in my gut told me to turn around, but I just gripped the wheel harder and pushed on. The money. The job. Don't screw it up, I told myself. Then my radio let out this high-pitched screech, like something tearing through static, and cut to silence. 5 seconds later, it came back. But not the station. It was a voice. Soft. Male. It whispered, "Almost there." I slammed the brakes, looked behind me. Nothing but trees and mist. I shut off the radio completely, heart pounding, told myself it was interference. Some random broadcast bouncing in. But I knew better. I'd heard it clear. As day. And I wasn't even close to the coordinates yet. When the GPS finally pinged, it didn't announce an address, just flashed a blue dot and the words, "You've arrived." I looked around. No streetlights, no signs, no other buildings, just a wide gravel path cutting through a wall of trees. My headlights followed it maybe 100 yards before it disappeared, into black. I idled for a second, staring down that path. My fuel gauge was solid. Trailer was sealed. I had no phone signal and no clue where I really was, but I'd come this far. I threw it into drive and rolled in. The gravel crunched under my tires like bones. I kept thinking I'd hit a dead end or a clearing, but instead the trees just fell away and revealed it a warehouse. Giant. Steel gray. No logo. No markings. No trucks. No people. Just this hulking slab of concrete and metal rising out of the woods like a tombstone. The gate was already open. No keypad. No guard. Just swinging on rusted hinges. I pulled through slowly. The place looked ancient but also untouched, like it had been built yesterday and abandoned the same day. There was a single red light blinking above a dock in the far corner. I backed in. As soon as I cut the engine, the lights on my dash flickered once, then went dead. My phone stayed black. Even the trailer's interior light refused to turn on when I opened the back. Still, I unloaded by flashlight, one pallet at a time. No staff came out, no clipboard guy, no one. I was alone. Then, right as I dropped the last pallet onto the dock, I heard it, a child's voice. It echoed faintly like it came from deep inside the warehouse, through thick walls and metal. The words were impossible to make out, but it was soft, curious, almost like singing. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I scanned the loading bay expecting someone to appear. Nothing. Just that red light pulsing behind me like a heartbeat. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" The singing stopped. Silence. Then, just as I turned to get back into my cab, a single knock echoed from inside the trailer I had just emptied. Not outside, inside. I nearly tripped over myself scrambling back up into the cab, slammed the door, locked it, and stared at the rear view like a deer waiting to get hit. The trailer was supposed to be empty. I'd unloaded everything. That knock wasn't wind, it was deliberate, sharp, like someone asking to be let out. I should have driven. Should have peeled out right then and there. But the truck was dead. No lights, no rumble, nothing, just the sound of my breathing and the eerie hum of that red beacon pulsing against the back wall. I grabbed my flashlight and climbed back out, feet crunching gravel. The knock didn't come again, but I couldn't just leave it. I walked around to the trailer door, every step heavier than the last. I raised the latch, braced myself, and yanked it open. Empty. Totally empty. But the floor was wet. A trail of small, muddy footprints led across the wooden panels and ended nowhere. They didn't walk out. They just stopped. The singing started again, but this time it was behind me. I spun around, flashlight beam slicing through the dark, but there was no one there, just that endless stretch of metal and concrete. I turned toward the warehouse and noticed something new. A second red light blinking inside, deeper in, like it was waiting for me. I don't know why I followed it. Maybe it was the feeling that if I left without knowing, I'd never sleep again. Maybe it was guilt, curiosity, fear disguised as bravery. I stepped through the dock entrance, flashlight cutting across stacked crates and rusted conveyor belts. The air smelled like damp soil and copper. The singing had stopped again. Instead, a low mechanical hum started, slow and rhythmic like gears turning somewhere above me. I passed an old office, its glass shattered, papers scattered everywhere. Inside was a torn logbook, open to a delivery manifest from 1996. Same route, same coordinates, same trucking company. I flipped the page. A name was scribbled in red ink. Mike Denton. I froze. That was my uncle. He vanished when I was a kid. Disappeared mid-route, truck and all. Before I could think, a loud click echoed behind me. I turned. Security cameras, 3 of them, had just swiveled toward me. They were watching. I backed away slowly, eyes locked on those cameras. One of them tilted, followed me like a predator deciding whether to pounce. The others stayed fixed, like they'd already seen enough. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stumbled into a side corridor hoping to find another exit. But every turn led deeper. The warehouse was changing. I swear it wasn't laid out like this when I entered. The walls weren't just old, they were wrong. Doorways appeared where there were none. Some led into empty pitch-black rooms. Others were sealed with rusted chains. Then I found the dispatch room, or what looked like one. Old monitors, thick with dust. Dead screens. Filing cabinets toppled over. But the wall, God, the wall was lined with Polaroid photos. Dozens of them, faded and curling with age. Each one showed a trucker. Different people, different rigs. Some were smiling, others looked scared. A few had their eyes scratched out. And in the middle of the wall, freshly pinned, not a speck of dust, was a photo of me. Same flannel, same truck, same confused look on my face. But the date scrawled at the bottom? Next Friday. That's when. The lights cut out. I turned, flashlight flickering, and heard it. Heavy boots on concrete. Slow. Steady. Breathing. Wet and wheezing. I ducked behind a broken desk, barely able to contain the sound of my own gasps. It moved past me, dragging something metallic. Chains? A hook? I didn't look. I ran. I darted through corridors, slipping on wet spots I didn't want to think about. Eventually, I spotted a glow. Faint headlights cutting through the cracks of a loading bay door. My truck. I crashed through the dock door and flung myself into the cab. The keys were still in the ignition, but everything was different. My logbook was weathered, yellowed with age. My coffee cup, once full, was dry and cracked. The picture of my daughter taped to the dash had faded almost completely. I turned. The key. The engine coughed, then roared to life. I didn't wait. I spun the wheel, crushed gravel, and peeled out of that place like the devil was in my rear view. Only once I hit pavement did I dare look back. But the warehouse was gone. I woke up parked at a Love station 2 states over, engine running. Half a tank gone. It was daylight. People walking around, birds chirping. My clock read 7:12 a.m., 2 days after the job. I called dispatch. Asked Tony about the route, the load, the client. He swore up and down he never sent it. Said I'd gone off grid, no contact, and he was about to report me missing. When I checked my GPS history, there was a 2-day blank. Like I'd never moved, but I know I did. The coordinates were still in my logs. So a week later, stupid. I know I went back. Needed closure, or maybe just proof I wasn't crazy. The road was there, but the warehouse gone. Just an overgrown lot, swallowed by vines and trees. But near the tree line, buried in brush, was a rusted truck cab. Long abandoned, paint peeled clean. I climbed in, heart pounding. On the seat was a trucker's hat. My hat. The one I lost that night. I haven't driven at night since. Hell, I barely sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear that knock. Not loud, just waiting. Like it's asking if I'll come back. Every route I get is from a dead man. I know how that sounds. Hell, I wouldn't believe me either. But when you've been on the road long enough, when the white lines start to feel like the only thing keeping you tethered to reality, you start to notice things that don't make sense, and you stop asking why. His name was Frank, my first dispatcher when I started trucking solo back in 2008. Gruff, old school, always signed his messages with a 10-4 kid. He died in a pileup outside. Wichita closed casket. I saw the obituary myself. But 10 years later I got a text. No number. No contact. Just a message on my company tablet. Drop 067. Coordinates attached. 10-4 kid. Thought it was a prank at first. Some sick joke from dispatch. But the tablet was offline. GPS wasn't even synced. And when I asked my current dispatcher about it, he looked at me like I was high. That was the first time. I ignored the message, kept driving my assigned route. But something about it, it stuck in my head like a splinter. That night, my brakes failed coming down the Appalachians. Funny how fast the dead get your attention. Frank wasn't just a dispatcher. He was the kind of guy who'd call you up at 3 a.m. just to make sure you didn't fall asleep at the wheel. Had this gravely voice like he chewed on diesel for breakfast and a dry sense of humor that made the worst days feel manageable. I was green back then. Didn't know how to chain up in snow. didn't know the shortcuts, didn't know how to deal with being alone for days at a time. But Frank? Frank had my back. He died in a crash on I-35. Some jackknifed cattle hauler flipped into oncoming. They said Frank was found in pieces, his truck burned down to the frame. I didn't drive for 3 months after that. Thought I was done with trucking for good. But you know how it is. Bills don't wait and the road pulls you back whether you're ready or not. Fast forward a few years, I was working for a new company out of Oklahoma, running solo hauls from LA to Maine. No one from the old days, no connections. Clean break. But one night I'm parked outside a truck stop in New Mexico and I get a ping on the company tablet. Again, no contact info. Just one line. Drop 1089, Cordova Ridge, 10-4 kid. My stomach dropped. Cordova Ridge wasn't on my route. Wasn't even on any of the maps I checked. I ignored it, figured it was some glitch or leftover data from the system. But when I checked my digital manifest that morning, the drop was on there. Slotted between 2 scheduled stops, like it had always been. Now here's the kicker. I went. Against my better judgment. Had to see what this was about. It took me through a broken highway, then down a gravel trail that damn near popped a tire. When I got there, all I found was a boarded-up structure with a half-rotted loading dock. No one around. But a trailer, same make and plate as my rig, was already backed in. I offloaded anyway, just to get it over with. When I got back to dispatch, to verify, they looked at me like I was crazy, said that drop didn't exist, wasn't on any route. And my log said I'd spent that night parked at the Loves in Gallup. I knew then something was wrong. Deeply wrong. After that Cordova Ridge haul, I told myself it was a fluke. Maybe my tablet glitched. Maybe someone at dispatch was screwing around and wiped the record to cover their ass. But deep down, I didn't believe that. You don't forget a road like that. Dirt the color of dried blood. Trees leaning in like they're listening. And you sure as hell don't forget unloading cargo into a trailer that already had your number on it. A week passed. Then another ping. Drop 2115. Ridgefield cutoff. 10-4 kid. Same format. Same ghost signature. I didn't go. That week was hell. My reefer unit failed, spoiled an entire load of dairy, got flagged by DOT for a non-existent brake light issue, one I just replaced the day before. Then my axle seal blew, stranding me outside Memphis for 12 hours in the rain. By the third time I ignored one of those Frank drops, my ELD crashed entirely, locking me out of my route schedule. It didn't feel random anymore. It felt like punishment. At a truck stop diner in Nebraska, I finally broke. Sat across from this old-timer named Mitch, ran tankers out of Kentucky. We got to talking about dispatch screw-ups, and I joked nervously about how I get phantom routes from a dead guy. Mitch stopped chewing. Went pale. "You said Frank?" he asked, real quiet. "Yeah," I said. "Frank Becker." "Why?" He looked around, then leaned in. "I heard that name. Once. Long time ago. Fella in Oregon told me he used to get midnight drops from a guy named Frank. Said they were never on paper. Said the roads were wrong." I tried to laugh, but my mouth was dry. "The kicker?" Mitch said. "That guy drove off a ridge too, months later. No brake marks, just went straight into the dark. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside my cab, every passing set of headlights, felt like it was watching me. So I did what any sane person wouldn't. I waited for the next ping. It came 5 nights later. Drop 3250. Way station 61, don't be late, 10-4 kid. The app timestamp showed 12:13 a.m. I didn't touch the brakes, I drove. I followed the coordinates past midnight deep into Tennessee. The highways got thinner, older, like the world around me had peeled back a few decades. Streetlights disappeared. GPS spun in circles. It was just me, my headlights, and the endless drone of rubber on asphalt. After 40 minutes of blacktop and fog, I saw it. A rusted green sign, Way, Station 61, half buried in kudzu. The station looked abandoned. The kind of place nature was trying to forget. The windows were dark, cracked. The roof sagged like it was tired of standing. But the gate was wide open, like it had been waiting for me. I pulled in. As my truck idled, the scale lights flickered, on by themselves. Red, then green. I stepped out. Air smelled like ozone and old diesel. My boots crunched gravel that felt too soft, like packed ash. Inside the station, there was a single desk, and on it, a manifest, typed, fresh ink. My name was on it, delivery complete. Time-stamped for that exact moment. Weight logged. Signature line. Already signed. I stood there, trying to breathe through the rising panic, when I heard it. A low crackle, like static crawling through the air. Then a voice. His voice, rasping, through a long dead CB channel that shouldn't have been transmitting. You're late. My blood ran cold. I spun around and there, framed in the back doorway, stood a figure. Couldn't see his face, just a silhouette. Tall, stocky, shoulders like I remembered Frank's. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there while the voice on the radio repeated, "You're late, you're late, you're late." Something snapped. I bolted, tripped down the front steps, cut my hand on broken concrete, got back in my rig, slammed the door, cranked the wheel. The CB hissed in my ear as I peeled out of that lot, not caring if I threw an axle. Then everything went black. No crash, no jolt, just gone. Next thing I remember, I was parked on the shoulder of I-40, sun rising, engine idling, fuel gauge untouched. Time skipped, like I'd jumped through hours in a blink. But here's the part that still keeps me up. The miles were logged, and the logbook, stamped. Signed off. By Frank Becker. I needed answers. No more running. No more shrugging it off as stress. Or sleep deprivation. I wasn't hallucinating. I had physical evidence. That manifest from the way station, still folded in my glove box, same ink, same timestamp. And that cursed signature, Frank's. Same shaky F, same hard-edged B. I started digging. Dotty records, dispatch logs, old company archives. Most of it was redacted or conveniently lost, but I found one breadcrumb, an internal report from 2010. Frank's truck had never been fully recovered, just burned fragments, a twisted axle, some scorched plating, no cab, no remains, just gone. That didn't sit right. I ran GPS history on my own truck, cross-referencing nights I received Frank's phantom drops, and my stomach flipped. My rig had already visited those places days, sometimes weeks before I received the pings, as if the system was logging the trips before they happened. But the scariest part? Dispatch never showed those routes. When I confronted my current dispatcher, Darren, he scoffed. "Dude, you're not even on the system some nights, it's like you disappear." I pulled out the manifests, the signed logbooks, the GPS trails. Darren turned pale, quiet. "I didn't send these," he said. "And that's not our system formatting." He went to IT, came back an hour later. "There's no trace of these drops anywhere, no server logs. It's like someone's bypassing the software entirely." That night I removed my CB, yanked the wires, unplugged GPS, shut down my tablet. I even disconnected my trailer transponder, thinking maybe that was the link. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I shut down the lines of communication, I could break whatever the hell this was. But when I got back into the cab the next morning, something new was waiting for me. A folded piece of paper. Just sitting there. On the dash, same handwriting, same ink. Next drop. Midnight. You know the way. No signature. Didn't need one. My radio was dead, my GPS off. I'd cut every digital cord I could, and still, he found me. I didn't even touch the paper. But when I started the engine, the route was already mapped in my mind, like I'd driven it 100 times before. Like Frank was still riding shotgun. I'm sitting at a rest stop off Route 19, typing this on a burner laptop I bought 2 towns back. Engine's running. Tank's full. The air outside smells like coming rain and something older, like rust and sweat and smoke. I haven't told anyone else. Who'd believe me? But I can feel it. Whatever this is, it's not finished. I've run the same miles twice now. Roads. I shouldn't remember but do. Way stations that don't exist anymore. Towns not on any map. Each time I go further. Each time it's harder to come back. And each time it feels more like I belong there. Tonight's drop is different. No coordinates. Just one word scrawled in the center of that folded note. Home. Maybe this is what happens when you spend too long on the road. Maybe your soul gets stuck between mile markers. Maybe the people who disappear out here don't crash, they just shift lanes. Frank knew. He didn't die in that wreck. Not really. He moved on. And now it's my turn. The rig's humming. The CB disconnected for days is crackling softly behind me. Then I hear it. Let's ride, kid, and I put it in gear.